Have you ever wondered what a wild animal could teach you about gratitude? Amidst the chaos of an ordinary morning, with car horns blaring and the sharp smell of hot asphalt filling the air, a lioness appeared out of nowhere, bringing an entire city to a standstill. But she wasn't just a lost animal. There was something profound in her eyes, a silent, almost human plea for help. What happened next not only halted the city, but changed a man named Elias forever. How could such a powerful creature seek out this particular human years after a brief encounter? You can already feel the weight of this story, right? This is the touching journey of a rescue that turned into friendship, of wild instinct blossoming into genuine trust. A desperate lioness, a cub on the brink of death, and a wildlife officer who could never have imagined the destiny awaiting him. Every step of this narrative will draw you deeper in, making you smile at the protective quirks of a mother lioness and hold your breath at the unexpected courage of an ordinary man. If you love heartwarming stories showing how empathy transcends all barriers, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any detail. But before we dive deep, here's a question. Have you ever felt an animal look directly into your eyes, as if it knew your deepest secrets? Because that's exactly where this story begins. And what this lioness did in the midst of that chaotic traffic will leave you speechless. Pause for a moment. Imagine her deep roar echoing between the stopped cars. How could Elias possibly know that this seemingly terrifying encounter was only the beginning of something much greater? The sun had barely risen when the city's traffic choked to a halt. Cars piled up, the scent of spilled coffee lingering in taxis, and then a roar. Not an engine. No, a lioness, massive, her dusty fur glinting in the morning light, walked between the vehicles. Can you believe it? Drivers froze, phones shaking in their hands, but she didn't attack. Her eyes, glassy, darted side to side, and she wailed, a low, almost human cry. What was a savanna beast doing there in the middle of the asphalt? The chaos grew, sirens piercing the air, but the lioness didn't budge. She circled, her heavy paws scratching the hot pavement, as if searching for something, or someone. A driver, stuck in the jam, swore he felt her warm breath through his cracked window. It was like she was begging, he said later. Ever seen an animal so powerful look so lost? The crowd shouted, some ran, but there was something in her. Desperation that called for calm, like the universe was saying, look closer. And then, amid the mayhem, a name started to spread. Elias. But who was he to face a lioness? Elias, the wildlife officer, was a few blocks away, sipping bitter tea when his radio crackled. Lioness downtown. Urgent. He dropped the cup, his heart racing. Ever thought about being minutes away from facing a wild beast? As he ran to the scene, asphalt dust clung to his boots, and he tried to recall. Had he seen a lioness like this before? The crowd parted when he arrived, and there she was, still, her eyes locked on him. It wasn't fear, it wasn't a threat, it was recognition. But how could a lioness know who he was? Breathe this moment in. The whole city silent, just her rumble echoing. Elias took a step, and she didn't back away. Instead, she turned, as if saying, "Wah, follow me." Ever felt a call you can't explain? He hesitated, but something in his soul urged him to trust. And that's when she started walking, leaving the road, heading toward the dry brush. What did she want to show him? The dry grass crunched under Elias's boots as he followed the lioness, his heart pounding so loud it seemed to echo across the savannah. The air carried a scent of warm earth, mixed with something wild, almost electric. She moved steadily but glanced back now and then, as if checking he was still there. Seriously, ever seen an animal call you like that? The crowd faded behind, the siren's wail vanishing, and there, just the two of them, it felt like time stopped. But a thought nagged at Elias. Those golden eyes. He knew them from somewhere. Years ago, Elias had rescued a young lioness, wounded by poachers. He still remembered her weight in his arms, her faint rumble as he carried her to the reserve. Could it be her? No way, he muttered, but the way she looked at him, it was like she was saying, You saved me once. Now it's my turn. Ever get chills thinking fate's up to something? Elias quickened his pace, the radio on his belt crackling, but he ignored it. The lioness wasn't fleeing. She was guiding him, and he felt he had to trust her. But where to? The lioness stopped. Abruptly, her tail swaying like a pendulum. The sun burned Elias's neck, and he wiped sweat away, watching her sniff the ground. She let out a low moan, almost a cry, and began digging with her paws, kicking up dust that danced in the light. "What's going on, girl?" he asked as if she could answer. And then he saw it. A hole, nearly invisible, hidden among roots. The lioness looked at him, her eyes shining with a clear plea. If you love animal stories that tug at your heart, hit that like and subscribe to catch what's next. But what did she want him to find? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the savannah's silence, just the sound of her claws scraping the earth. Elias crouched, his heart in his throat, and heard something, a faint mew from the hole. A cub? The lioness stepped back as if saying, "It's up to you now." But how could he climb down there? No ropes, no help, with a wild beast beside him. The weak mew from the hole cut through the silence like a knife. Elias knelt, the damp smell of earth rising to him, while the lioness circled, her tail whipping the air. Sunlight barely reached the hole, but he saw a glimmer, 2 scared little eyes deep down. A cub, so tiny it could fit in his palm, was trapped, one paw twisted, its body trembling. Can you imagine the ache in your chest? Elias glanced at the lioness, who stopped as if she knew he was its only hope. But climbing down there with nothing was madness. Or was it? No ropes, no team. Elias had only instinct, his and the lioness's. He shed his jacket, the noon heat sticking his shirt to his back, and began squeezing into the hole. The earth scraped his arms, the space so tight he could barely breathe. Ever felt the weight of a moment where there's no turning back? Down. Below, the cub cried, each whimper seeming to say, "Please don't give up." The lioness up above let out low rumbles as if cheering him on. Did she really trust him that much? Elias stretched his arm, his fingers brushing the cub's soft fur. "Easy, little one," he whispered, his voice echoing in the hole. The cub tried to move, but its injured paw made it squeal. Every second counted. The cub was weak, dehydrated, and Elias knew he couldn't fail. He cradled the cub gently, his heart racing, and started climbing up, dirt falling in his eyes. The lioness, now silent, watched with a calm that felt almost otherworldly. Who'd have thought a beast could teach so much about hope? Hold this moment. Picture the cub nestled against Elias's chest, so fragile, yet alive. He emerged from the hole covered in dust, and the lioness stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. But suddenly the cub stopped moving. Elias felt a chill down his spine. Had he gotten there too late? Elias held the cub, his heart frozen as the tiny body felt limp in his arms. The hot savanna wind blew, carrying the scent of dry grass, but all he could hear was the cub's silence. The lioness, so majestic, let out a moan that sent shivers through Elias. The sound of a mother terrified of losing everything. Know that moment when the world seems to hold its breath? She took a step, her eyes fixed on the cub, but didn't lunge. It was as if she trusted Elias, even with her heart shattered. How do you explain such loyalty? He knelt, the rough ground, biting his knees, and checked the cub. A faint twitch in its chest. It was still breathing, but faintly. "Hang on, little one," he murmured, his voice shaky. The lioness paced, her paws kicking pebbles that rolled in the quiet. Ever had an animal look at you like it could read your soul? Elias felt it, a weight blending respect and urgency. He hit the radio, calling for help, but his eyes stayed on the lioness. She wasn't just a beast, she was a mother, and he knew she'd do anything for her cub. Suddenly the lioness came closer, so near Elias felt her body's warmth. He froze, but she only nudged the cub with her snout, a touch so soft it felt like a whisper. Then she raised her head and licked Elias's hand, a silent gratitude worth more than words. Who knew a wild beast could teach so much about love? Dust still hung in the air when he heard a jeep's rumble approaching. Help was coming, But the lioness didn't move. Would she let her cub go with strangers? Stop and feel this for a second. The lioness, a savannah queen, trusting her cub to a human. Elias held the cub tighter, promising her wordlessly that he wouldn't fail. But with the team arriving, a new question loomed: how to convince such a protective mother to follow to an unfamiliar place. The jeep screeched to a stop, kicking. A dust cloud that swirled in the hot air. Elias, still cradling the cub, caught the antiseptic smell from the medical team leaping out. The lioness raised her head, ears twitching, but get this, she didn't growl. She stood there, eyes glued to the cub, as if she knew these people were its salvation. Ever wondered how a wild animal can understand so much? Elias handed the cub to the vet, his heart clenching. Would the little one pull through? The vet, Dr. Amara, worked fast, the clink of syringes against her kit echoing across the savannah. She checked the cub, its frail body on a blanket, and sighed with relief. He's dehydrated but alive. Elias smiled but glanced at the lioness, who seemed to read every move. Who hasn't wanted to protect someone with all their might? Amara gave fluids and the cub let out a faint mew, prompting the lioness to rumble low, almost a thank you. It was like she was saying, I trust you, but don't take my baby. So, where to take them now? Elias persuaded the team to bring the cub to the wildlife center, but the lioness, she wasn't staying behind. With a leap, she followed the jeep, her steady trot echoing on the dry ground. Can you believe a mother so determined? The driver sped up, the engine's roar, mixing with the wind, but she didn't quit, keeping pace. At the center, the team set up a makeshift area, but the lioness paused at the entrance, sniffing the air heavy with metal and disinfectant. She trusted Elias, but the others? Would she step into such a strange place? Picture this for a moment. The lioness, a savannah queen, trailing humans for love of her cub. Elias stayed by her side, speaking softly, as if she understood every word. The team watched, jaws dropped, as she took a hesitant step inside. But with the cub now in intensive care, a new doubt hung. How would she react to seeing him so vulnerable? In the wildlife center, the air smelled of disinfectant and damp hay, a sharp contrast to the open savannah. The lioness walked slowly, her paws echoing on the concrete, while Elias and the team's eyes followed, half mesmerized. She didn't growl, didn't bare her teeth, just stared at the cub, now in a makeshift incubator. Ever thought about what runs through the mind of such a smart animal? Dr. Amara whispered. She remembers him, Elias. She remembers you. How could a wild beast hold such a vivid memory? Elias leaned against the wall, the day's heat still clinging to his skin, and tried to process. Years ago, he'd saved this lioness, cleaning wounds and feeding her as she healed. Now here she was, trusting him again, like time hadn't passed. Ever felt an animal gets you better than most people? The lioness sat, her tail tapping lightly, watching the team's every move. A nervous rookie guard asked, She won't attack, will she? Elias just grinned. She knows who we are. What stunned everyone was her calm. Despite the hum of machines and the center's chemical smell, she didn't flinch. Once, she even let Amara brush her flank, a move that made the team hold their breath. It's like she's thanking us, Amara said, chuckling softly. The animal's pure intelligence felt like a gift from the universe. The lioness kept her eyes on the cub as if saying, I know you're caring for him. But how far would this trust stretch? Take a deep breath for a moment. Think of the lioness, a wild queen, yielding to human care for love. Elias felt a lump in his throat, seeing this rare bond between species. The team discussed the next step, keeping the cub under observation. But how to convince the lioness to stay in such an alien place, so far from the savannah? The wildlife center buzzed with the hum of fans and the faint clink of medical tools. The lioness, now in an enclosure with a view of the cub, locked her eyes on the glass between them, the sun's reflection glinting off her fur. The eucalyptus scent of disinfectant lingered, but she didn't seem to care. Elias watched, awestruck. Ever seen an animal so focused, like nothing else existed? She refused food, just lay there, alert to every weak mew from the cub. How do you convince a mother to wait, even with her heart breaking? The team decided to keep the lioness as close as possible, rigging a space where she could see the cub without disrupting treatment. Amara adjusted the IV, the drip soft ping like a clock. "She's teaching us patience," she said with a weary smile. Ever felt an animal teach you something without a word? The lioness, once so wary, now seemed to understand the humans around her. Once she even let a guard scratch her ear, making everyone chuckle quietly. But her eyes never left the cub. Elias spent hours there, talking to her softly, like old friends. The concrete's heat rose through his shoes, but he didn't leave. "You're tough, girl," he said, and she answered with a gentle rumble, almost a sigh. It was as if the universe had aligned everything for this moment of mutual trust. The team noticed. The lioness relaxed more with Elias nearby, like he was a bridge to her cub. But the little one was still fighting, and each day tested their hope. How long could she bear being so close yet so far? Close your eyes and picture it. A lioness separated from her cub by glass, but steady as a rock. The cub started moving more, a sign of progress, and the team celebrated quietly. Elias looked at the lioness, seeing a new spark in her eyes. But then, Amara brought news. The cub was strong enough for a reunion. What would that moment be like after so much waiting? The sun rose, painting the sky orange, as the team opened the enclosure's door. The morning air carried a faint dew scent, and the lioness, who'd spent days staring through glass, leapt up, ears perked. Elias held the radio, his heart pounding. "It's time, girl," he said, grinning. "Can you imagine what it's like to see an emptiness fill with life?" The cub, now stronger, wiggled its paws on the blanket, and the lioness seemed to sense it before even seeing him. How can an instinct be so spot on? Amara led the lioness to the cub's room, her steps echoing in the concrete hall. The team stood, silent, barely breathing as the door opened. The lioness stepped in slowly, her snout sniffing the air, and then, there he was, her little one, looking at her with bright eyes. Who hasn't felt their heart squeeze at such a pure reunion? She let out a low rumble, almost a song, and nudged the cub with her snout, while he answered with a hoarse mew. Elias wiped a tear, laughing. This family's tougher than anything. The reunion was quiet but brimming with emotion. The lioness lay beside the cub, licking him gently, as if erasing every second apart. Her body's warmth seemed to fill the room, and the usually serious team swapped smiles. It was as if nature said, "Love always finds a way." The lioness glanced at Elias for a moment, a recognition needing no words. But with the cub still recovering, a question lingered. How long could they stay there? Feel this moment for a second, the lioness and her cub together again as if the world stopped for them. The team decided that in 48 hours both would be ready to return to the savannah. Elias watched, knowing the goodbye was near. But what would it be like to release this special duo back to freedom? The jeep jolted along the dusty trail, the smell of dry grass flooding the open windows. The lioness and her cub, now together in a reinforced crate, headed for the Masai Mara Reserve. Elias in the front seat felt the engines rumble in his chest, but his eyes were on the lioness. She lay calmly, licking the cub, who played with her tail. Ever seen an animal so at ease, like they know they're going home? He smiled, thinking, "You're a warrior, girl." But would she miss him? The savannah opened before them, the sun gilding the horizon, birdsong mixed with the rustle of trees. The team stopped in a clearing, and Amara carefully opened the crate. The lioness stepped out first, her paws greeting the earth like an old friend. Who hasn't yearned for a place that's part of them? The cub stumbled after, then ran, testing his little legs. Elias chuckled, watching the lioness sniff the air, her eyes shining with freedom. But something still held him there. The lioness took a few steps, the cub glued to her, but then stopped. She turned, looking straight at Elias a few meters away. The wind stirred dust, carrying a faint wildflower scent. Was it a goodbye? A thank you? He felt a lump in his throat. Sometimes the greatest teachers don't speak, he thought, as if the universe agreed. She held his gaze for a moment, then led the cub toward the tall grass. But what did that look really mean? Hold this image for a moment. The lioness, majestic, vanishing into the savannah with her cub, while Elias lingered behind. The team began packing the jeep, but he still stared at the horizon, lost in thought. What had this journey taught them all? And how do you tell a story so vast? The sun sank over the savannah, painting the sky red, as Elias and the team returned. In silence, the scent of warm earth lingered, mixed with distant insect hums. The image of the lioness fading with her cub stuck in Elias's mind. Ever felt a story shift something inside you? He gazed out the window, the horizon swallowing the last light, and thought, sometimes animals show us what really matters. But what had this journey left for them all? Back at the center, the team gathered, still processing what they'd lived. The clink of tea mugs filled the room, and Amara broke the silence. She trusted us, even being wild. That's sacred. Who hasn't been stunned by an animal's wisdom? They talked about the lioness, her sharp memory, her loyalty to her cub, and how Elias became a bridge between worlds. It was as if nature used this story to remind everyone, empathy knows no bounds. But a bigger lesson waited to be spoken. Elias, in a corner, scribbled in a notebook, trying to capture what he felt. The lamp's warmth hugged the room, but his thoughts were in the savannah. She looked at me like she knew everything, he said, chuckling softly. The lioness's trust, the instinct that led her to him, the silence of their reunion, it all felt like a gift. It wasn't just about saving a cub. It was about redemption, about believing good comes back. But how do you carry such a story forward? Pause and reflect for a moment. A wild lioness taught humans what it means to trust, love, and let go. The team decided to share the story, hoping to inspire others to respect wildlife. Elias tucked away his notebook, feeling something bigger had begun. But what was the final message this journey wanted to leave in everyone's hearts? The savannah slept under a star-studded sky, the night's silence broken only by cricket songs. Elias, back at the center, stared at an old photo of the young lioness he'd rescued years ago. The paper yellowed by time. The scent of cold coffee in the mug nearby mingled with fresh air slipping through the window. Ever stop to think how one moment can change everything? This story of a lioness who stopped traffic, found an old friend, and fought for her. Wasn't just about rescue. It was about trust, about recognizing good, about proving love crosses even the jungle's barriers. Sometimes, the greatest teachers have 4 legs. The lioness taught Elias, the team, and maybe all of us, that an animal's memory holds more than instinct. It holds gratitude. Every rumble of hers, every glance was a reminder. Nature isn't just wild, it's wise. Who hasn't looked into an animal's eyes and seen a piece of their own soul reflected? This journey, from the city's chaos to the savannah's silence, showed that empathy is the bridge between species, and redemption comes when we open our hearts. The lioness and her cub, now free, carry this lesson wherever they are. And you, what did you think of this story? Ever had an animal change your life, make you see the world differently? Tell us in the comments, because every story is a new bridge between us and nature. If this tale warmed your heart, the next video suggested by YouTube will move you even more. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe, and let's keep celebrating the stories that prove the world still has plenty of goodness to offer.